Tim, it's Don LaGreca and John McEnroe. What's going on?
I'm well, fellas. How you doing?
All right. We wanted to get about the All-Star Game in the first half and the second half of the season, but it is 2014. Technology is great. Travel is so much better than it was back in the day. They're not on trains anymore, Tim. So why do we still have division rivals play a game, a meaningful game, that can be decided in the bottom of the fifth inning because of rain? Can't Major League Baseball determine before a contest, hey, the team is coming back to this city, we are going to finish this game? Why can't they do that?
Well, that's an excellent point. You hate to have any game played halfway. They never end an NBA game at halftime. John McEnroe never
That's
had
right.
a tennis match and after one set. That's ridiculous.
Only once. That's when I was defaulted, but go ahead.
But your point is well made. Now, it's simply not that easy, because if we had a bunch of these things and the teams were not coming back, then what are you going to do? If you have these rules, you have to keep them for every team. Then they'll say, hey, wait a minute, you completed that game in Baltimore that night. You have to complete this game in Seattle tonight. That's the tricky part of the scheduling.
Well,
but I'm with you, Don. Just what if the Yankees lose the division race or lose out on the wild card by one game,
right,
and they didn't even get to finish this game? I see your point. It's well made. I just know the schedule is not quite as easy, and the rule is not quite as simple as it looks.
But, again, and I know that's the simple answer, and we even got tweets from people saying you can't have one rule for one set of circumstances and another set for another. But we keep hearing this thing that never gets used, the best interest in baseball. And Bud Selig can say, hey, listen, we've got a circumstance here where these teams are meeting again in the same facility later on in the year. I think people will understand if Seattle's not going to the Mets again for another 3 years, we can't finish the game. But if it's determined beforehand, both sides agree upon it, that's just being proactive to me. And I just think that, hey, listen, I'm no Yankee fan. Tim, you know that. I'm a Met fan. But what fair is fair, and that didn't seem fair to me.
Well, you're right, and it would have been unfair if the same thing had happened to the Orioles. So we know this is not a New York thing. I get it. But again, it's just a lot trickier than it appears. But all sorts of rules in baseball take an awful long time to get changed. Eventually they do, but you have to keep hammering this, Don, or else it's going to stay the way it is.
Well, on an equally sad note, as a diehard Mets fan, Bartolo Colon apparently is available to anyone interested. What have you heard about that? Is there actually people that would be interested in picking up Bartolo Colon's contract, the last year and a half of it?
It's not an easy situation there either, John, because you're right. There's money involved. And he's not a top-of-the-rotation guy, obviously, anymore. But in the middle of a pennant race, teams are looking for anybody that can get them to the playoffs. Once you get in baseball, you have a chance to win the World Series. This is not like teams making the NBA playoffs and then Jordan Bulls just rolling over them in 5 games or whatever it is. This is different, and that's why teams will look at Colon and say, hey, he could be our 3rd starter down the stretch. We could get him for 6 starts, and he could really help us because he throws strikes. He's a veteran guy. He's not going to, pitch us out of the first 2 innings by walking 6 guys. So he has some value. And the Cardinals are always looking for pitching. So are the Giants. The Orioles use another pitcher always. This goes for almost any team out there. But, again, the money's a bit prohibitive. So I wouldn't be surprised if he moved, but Sandy Alderson is not going to just give him away. Not when the Mets have played pretty well here and gotten to 3rd place in 5 games under 500.
Yeah, something seems to be different around this team, Tim. We've seen this team rattle off, 6 out of 7, but something seems different. Just around Major League Baseball, are people looking at the Mets now as a team that maybe is the up-and-comer that we thought maybe at the beginning of the year?
Tim, before you answer that, Don's dreaming a little bit, I bet, but he's trying to set you up for a positive. So be honest with us now.
Yeah.
Okay, don't just feed him a bunch of malarkey, okay? Please. Tell us like it is with the Mets.
That's all I ever want, Tim.
All right. Well, as you know, Don, and you too, John, this was a year just to get through the year somehow without embarrassing yourself so you can be ready for next year when Harvey returns. Maybe Montero wasn't that great when he came up, and Syndergaard and everybody else. Wheeler is ready to pitch in the rotation. next year. And I think they've done better than I thought they would. But the people around baseball see all the young arms that the Mets have stockpiled, and they're all very impressed with what the Mets have done. But they also know they're 2, 3, maybe even 4 position players short of being a good team.
That's true.
It doesn't matter how much pitching you put together. If you don't have a shortstop and a corner outfielder and all these guys that can hit, even a first baseman that can hit, you're not going to go anywhere. So that's what the Mets have to do. Again, people are impressed with one half the club, the young pitching, and they know a lot of work has to be done for the everyday lineup.
Well, speaking of shortstops, Tulowitzki, now apparently is he being made available? Because that would seem to be an awesome person to pick up for the Mets. Is there any word? Is that true that he's being shopped around?
I don't think he's being shopped around. Now, the Rockies, John, as you know, aren't very good. So they're going to listen to anybody about any one of their players. But to get Tulowitzki, it would cost an enormous amount as far as players go.
More than Bartolo Colon?
More than Bartolo Colon. Are you serious?
Hey, that's his line.
Wait a minute, man. We're mixing up things here.
Right. So I don't think the Rockies are going to move Tulowitzki because he's such a great player. He means so much to that team. And if you are going to go get him, like I said, you have to mortgage the future and you have to pick up all of that contract. And they're certainly not going to pay to let Troy Tulowitzki walk away. He's essentially been the best player in baseball for the first half of the season, certainly in the National League, playing shortstop and putting up those kind of numbers. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think they're shopping him. But if the Mets said we have to have him, they could probably put a package together, but they would mortgage the future for it.
All right, before we let you go, Cliff Lee to the Yankees, is that possible?
Yeah, I think it is, but a bunch of things have to happen. First off, Cliff Lee has to get healthy, and he has to make a major league start, at least one, before the trade deadline so the Yankees can get a look at him. He is a strike-throwing machine, and when he is right, he is still a really good pitcher who the Yankees would desperately need. But, again, the Phillies are going to want the world in return, way too much for a guy of his age, and the Phillies are probably not going to pay one penny of Cliff Lee's contract when they let him go. So the Yankees have to ask themselves, is this worth 2 really good young players, pick up all of that money, and is he going to be good enough to pitch us into the playoffs with no CC there and maybe no Tanaka? That's a really difficult question to answer. And again, GMs have told me for 35 years, this is when we earn our money, right now. Do we pull the trigger and trade Cliff Lee? Do we pull the trigger and make a trade for Cliff Lee? This is a really important time of year.
Tim, enjoy the Home Run Derby and the All-Star Game tomorrow, and enjoy Minnesota. We'll talk to you soon.